Hello, everyone. It is February 4th, 2021. Today, we will be reading through the book Jesus is calling. Well, not through the book. We'll be reading through today's devotional from Jesus is calling and the book of First Corinthians, chapter 18. Not Corinthians. Apparently, I'm a little bit tongue tied today. I am sorry. We're reading through the book of First Samuel, chapter 18, and the fallout after the David and Goliath story. I did, honestly, I just prayed, but it seems like my thoughts and everything are a little bit jumbled. I'm sorry about that. Um, so, but without further ado, let's just get into reading. Jesus is calling for today, February 4th. Bring me your weakness. My thoughts being all jumbled up and everything today. And receive my peace. Accept yourself and your circumstances just as they are, remembering that I am sovereign over everything. Do not wear yourself out with analyzing and planning. Instead, let your thankfulness and trust be your guides through this day. They will keep you close to me. As you live in radiance of my peace shines upon you. You will cease to notice how weak or strong you feel because you will be focusing on me. The best way to get through this day is step by step with me. Continue this intimate journey, trusting that the path you are following is headed for heaven. And that was inspired by three different sections of the Bible. The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace. Psalm 29:11. And then the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Numbers 6:24-26. And then lastly, but I trust your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. Psalm 13:5. That staying focused on God gives us what we need for those moments. Sometimes it's just a reminder that, today might be hard, but he is with us. The creator of the universe is with us. We are never truly alone. So now we're going to be jumping into the book of First Samuel. We're going to be reading through chapter 18. But before we do that, let's kind of talk about the story so far. God gave the people a king, even though he warned them that it's not going to be a good situation. It's not going to be what you guys want it to be. And it didn't take too long for Saul to kind of start drifting away from what God wanted and started doing decrees for himself and trying to hold on to power and authority. And he started winning some military battles. But as he started doing things his own way, he started feeling more anxious and depressed. And as he started feeling more anxious and depressed, he got this young guy who knew how to play a harp come in, happened to be David, and play music for him. And as he played music for him, he felt his anxiety and his depression begin to lift. And then this situation came with this Philistine army who came out. They would have just completely overwhelmed the Israelite army. But the Philistines had this one massive champion standing at 9 feet tall, as strong as like a bunch of ox type deal. And I picture him like a Braun Strowman from WWE coming out, except with like spears and shields and all that stuff. And then he just mocks them for 40 days. He's mocking the Israelite army, calling them weak and puny and worthless. David goes to deliver food to some of his brothers and is going, so why is this guy mocking us? What are we doing? And they're like, well, we need a champion, but I ain't going to just get killed by that guy and then lose the kingdom for us. And it's like, yeah, but God's with us. He's on our side. He'll defend us. He'll protect us. So on and so forth. So then Saul sends them out. And David slays Goliath. And everyone in Israel is overjoyed, including Saul. Saul is like, who is this guy? We got to honor him. Saul is like, him and his family never have to pay taxes again. This guy has it made now because he slayed Goliath. He rescued us. He is the man. And Saul lifts him up on this pedestal. Everyone saw what happened. This puny young man flung a rock at the giant among the men and beat him. And obviously, he didn't have armor on or anything. People are like, God is with David. That is awesome. And that's where our story is going to pick up. So turn to me to 1 Samuel chapter 18, and we'll start reading. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met with Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made Solomon a solemn pact with David, because he loved him as himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, and an appointment that was welcomed by the people of Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song. Saul killed his thousands, David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. What is this? He said. They credit David with 10,000 and me with only thousands? Next, they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp, as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall. But David escaped him twice. Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men. And David faithfully led his troops into battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. David married Saul's daughter, which was actually a promise made when he defeated Goliath. One day, Saul said to David, I am ready to give you my older daughter, Merab, as your wife. But you first must prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, I'll send him out against the Philistines and let them kill him rather than doing it myself. For who am I, and what is my family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law? David exclaimed. My father's family is nothing. So when the time came for Saul to give his daughter Merab in marriage to David, he gave her instead of Adriel, a man from... What? Sorry, I need to read that again. So, when the time came for Saul to give his daughter Merab in marriage to David, he gave her instead to Adriel, a man from Melhellah. In the meantime, Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David, and Saul was delighted when he heard about it. "Here's another chance to see him killed by the Philistines," Saul said to himself. To David he said, "Today you have a second chance to become my son-in-law." Then Saul told his men to say to David, "The king really likes you, and so do we. Why don't you accept the king's offer to become his son-in-law?" When Saul's men said these things to David, he replied, "How can a poor man from a humble family afford the bride price of a daughter of a king?" When Saul's men reported this back to the king, he told them, "Tell David, all I want for the bride price is 100 Philistine foreskins. Vengeance on his enemies is all I really want." But Saul had in mind was that David would be killed in the fight. David was delighted to accept the offer. Before the time expired, he and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. Then David fulfilled the king's requirement by presenting all their foreskins to him. So Saul gave his daughter Michal to David to be his wife. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and how much his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of David, and he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. Sorry that I was a little bit dyslexic today. And I know it made it a little bit hard to read, so thank you for sticking with me. So yeah, in this we have Saul is in this position of power. Saul was in favor with God. And then he started making selfish decisions, ego decisions, started choosing others over God. And because of that, he started losing favor. And David, who has been playing the harp to calm the anxiety and the depression that Saul had, now he hears it and he's reminded that I am not as good as David. And he starts comparing himself to David. And instead of accepting the fact and being humble, he reacts in fear and panic and anger. And he picks up a spear and he throws it at David. And then he picks up another one and throws it at David. David dodges both and he becomes even more afraid. But what is it with David that Saul is fearing? He's fearing his old age. He's fearing the truth that he has fallen out of favor with God. He's fearing that he's going to be replaced, that he's going to lose power, that he's going to lose authority. And in this, too, you have David going, like, I'm too poor to accept, your daughter as my wife, even though he was already promised his daughter, Saul's daughter, as his wife for defeating Goliath. But Saul tricks and comes up with plans not to follow through on his own promises. His word has become less and less and less honorable. In fear and in feeling inferior, Saul has, and in an attempt to hold on to the power that he has started to react in these ways that are becoming less and less honorable and more aggressive. Saul doesn't embrace the success of others. And that's when we look at 1 Corinthians 13, love does not envy, and it does not celebrate in others' failures. And part of that is celebrating in others' victories. Saul has gained the whole world. He has gained the Israelite army. He's gained the kingdom. He is the first king of Israel. But he's more infatuated with power and authority than with God and his family. He doesn't keep his word. He lies time and time again. He finds a way of justifying his actions. But here's the other thing with David. David doesn't meet his misdeeds with anger and aggression back. No, he is humble. He's like, yeah, but I'm poor. I can't afford the dowry. I'm sorry. He doesn't meet the getting spears thrown at him with like, I'm gonna kill you. He dodges them, and it sounds like he just kind of was like, all right, I'm done. He builds up a strong friendship with his son Jonathan, with Saul's son Jonathan. David is coming into this humble, confident in God, and loving his enemy and the son of his enemy. One of the reasons hate is so powerful is if one person in this one family or people group does something, we label them all with the same hate and disgust that we label that one person. And that's not right. That's racism. That's stereotyping. That's it's a way to let hate and fear in. We've seen this hate and fear played out on the news night and night and night again. Tragedy happens when we act like Saul. When we see ourselves as better than on the outside and we do whatever we can to hold on to that illusion. How does Jesus counteract that? He asks us to see others as better than ourselves. And we see David doing that. We see David going like, yeah, okay, I have this great victory. Everyone kind of loves me, but it's all God. I'm still poor. I'm still doing this. My family doesn't have blank, 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 right? And it's less about like, I'm small, I'm short, I'm whatever. It's it's not focused. David's not focused on his outward appearance as Saul was. He was just like, yeah, we're poor. There's some good things with us, sure, but like I can't afford that. And then Saul tries to set him up to kill him, and once again, that lying and manipulation comes back and bites him on the. It foils his plan, and David finds a loving marriage, a loving relationship. And that love, that success that David has, builds up animosity and fear to David again. Jesus asks us to go the way of love. The world tells us to go the way of Saul. Are you going to be jealous, manipulative, do whatever you can to hold on to your feelings of superiority, even though when you think about it through the lens of reality, you're not superior? Those things that you see in others that drive you crazy, Those might be areas in your life that you are less than in those areas. But there are other areas that you're probably completely ignoring that you are so much better in. But you know what? It doesn't matter because God loves you. He values you. He gives you more value than you could ever give yourself. So we're asked to be humble and to love. Let's pray. AJC, awesome Jesus Christ, I thank you for the story of David. And as he enters into this story, he brings this culture of love, forgiveness, and humility. Even though he had the right to demand his daughter, he had the right to demand riches, he had the right to demand this, that, and the other, and he even had the right to go against Saul. But he didn't. Instead, he forgave, he loved, and he cared. He cared for Saul's daughter. He cares for Saul's son. He's overcoming Saul's hate with love and with confidence in you, Lord. Help us to have confidence in you. Help us to love you and not hate others, especially hate others because it makes us feel insecure. Help us to rise above that and to see others as even better than ourselves, which will lead us to areas of compassion, which will lead us to areas of help and patience and kindness. It's so easy to get road rage when you only feel like you're the car in the road and no one else understands why you need to get where you need to get to. But let us have compassion and know that other people are on a journey too, that other people need to get places. Let us be quick to forgive and slow to anger. Lord, guide us and transform our hearts. After this great victory, where David was on cloud nine and he felt such relief, it quickly turned into fear because now he felt like the enemy was within because it was loving him and serving his God. May we not get jealous because we are looking at what others are doing and missing what we're supposed to be doing ourselves. I know that has got me into trouble before too. As I'm trying to grow in you, I gained jealous and I wanted to hurt somebody because I felt like they were just so much better than me. And it made me feel insecure, and that's not right. And I thank you for changing my heart to be from this position of insecure anger to loving understanding. And we got to save somebody from like a flip car together, and like we ended up doing this amazing stuff when we joined forces and we came together. It was awesome, Lord, and I thank you so much for that and for bringing that to my mind. You are awesome, Lord. Thank you so much. Oh, amen. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Have a fantastic day, and God bless.